Madara Uchiha, he is the real final villain of Naruto. I don't care about Kaguya and all the alien stuff. That ending was dogshit. Madara never actually felt beaten, and I still do not understand why Kishimoto wrote him out like that. What makes it worse is how perfectly he was built up before that. For most of the story, we only hear his name. Obito uses his identity. Other characters talk about him like some kind of ghost. He walks into the war and just tossed everyone like flies. What an entrance. But the thing is, not only power that makes Madara interesting, how he views the world from his perspective is also very interesting. His trauma, his losses, the world he grew up in, all of that shaped how he saw reality, and once you really look at it, calling him simply evil feels way too shallow. Madara did not even need screen time at the beginning. His reputation did all the work. For most of the story, he was just a name people were afraid to say, like Voldemort. When Obito used his identity and introduced himself as Madara, you can see the reaction from different character, and you feel that his name alone tells you how much weight that name carried. And when the real Madara finally appeared, the hype actually made sense. He just walked into the war and destroyed thousands of shinobi. Calm, efficient, almost bored for him. As a viewer, we know he is on a completely different level. Even 5 Kage looks like nothing. But it feels kinda weird when we think about it again. After such a long history of shinobi world, Madara is still on top. That means there has been no progress in skill in the generations after him. But we're not discussing that now. If you take a look of Madara's confidence, it comes from a life built around survival, loss, and control. When you grow up surrounded by death, strength becomes the only way you feel safe. And that mindset started way before the war ever began. He was born into a world where war was just normal life, not like occasional conflict. War was the default setting of this world. Kids were dying before they even got the chance to grow up. People expected to die young, and Madara lost almost all of his siblings because of that world. Then he meets Hashirama. And this part is honestly one of the most tragic things in his life. 2 kids from enemy clans, just skipping stones and talking about dreams like normal kids, without knowing they are supposed to hate each other. They both lost siblings. They both hated the world they were born into. They both wanted the same thing, a world where kids did not have to fight. When they realized they were from Uchiha and Senju, everything collapsed. Their world forced them to be an enemy. Madara choosing to walk away from Hashirama was not some evil decision, it was survival. Loyalty to clan was everything back then. And this is where you start seeing the psychology forming. When someone learns early that even the best connection in their life can be taken away by the system, trust becomes very difficult. Izuna's death is where everything really breaks inside Madara. Tobirama killed him in battle, and that loss completely changed how Madara saw the world. But what's interesting is he did not turn into some blind revenge machine. He did not suddenly hate Hashirama. He did not even demand Tobirama's life in return. His reaction was not rage, it was just deep sadness. Hashirama even offered to die in front of him, just to make things fair and end the conflict. And Madara refused. They chose peace instead and created Konoha together. But from that point on, Madara was no longer the same person. Losing Izuna destroyed the last emotional anchor he had in life. Psychologically, when someone loses the person they built their entire motivation around, they either collapse or they overcompensate. This is also where his distrust starts to make sense. He started to believe that no system, no village, no alliance could actually protect what matters. Jung talks about how unresolved grief can turn into a shadow that slowly takes over someone's personality. That shadow shows up in Madara as suspicion, isolation, and the belief that only he can carry the burden. He still wanted peace, but now it was no longer built on hope. It was built on fear of losing everything again. Madara's obsession with power came from fear. He was a perfectionist because he could not afford to lose again. He trained non-stop. He pushed himself harder than anyone else. Even as a child, he was already killing adult shinobi. People called him a genius, but that genius was built on trauma. Strength was not about pride for him. Strength was safety. Strength was control. Nietzsche talked about how suffering can either break a person or push them to create their own meaning through power. Madara is basically that idea in character form. He did not seek power to dominate others. He sought power because without it, everyone he loved kept dying. And even with all that darkness, the one thing that still felt real to him was his rivalry with Hashirama. He genuinely enjoyed fighting him. Hashirama was the only person who ever matched him, the only one who pushed him. You can see that even during the war. When Madara senses Hashirama's chakra, he smiles. That rivalry kept him human in a strange way. Without Hashirama, Madara probably would have completely lost himself much earlier. After Konoha was created, things did not suddenly get better for Madara. If anything, he slowly started feeling more isolated. The village did not fully trust him. Even his own clan began to question him. When the Hokage position went to Hashirama instead of him, it confirmed what he already feared, that he would never truly belong in the system he helped build. So he left. He no longer believed in it. This is where the shift happens ideologically. When Madara read the stone tablet, it broke the last bit of hope he had. He became convinced that the Shinobi system would always repeat the same cycle. War, temporary peace, then war again. From his perspective, history already proved it. Hobbes believed that without absolute control, humans always fall back into conflict. Madara basically reached the same conclusion on his own. So his logic became simple. If reality itself is the problem, then reality needs to be replaced. That is where the Moon Eye Plan or Infinite Tsukuyomi is born. Long story short, Madara came back to Konoha. He came back to challenge Hashirama directly. This was war of an ideology. Two people who understood each other better than anyone else, standing on opposite sides of how peace should be achieved. They fought until exhaustion. The Valley of the End was created from that battle. Madara lost. Hashirama killed him, but turned out that Madara used Izanagi to revive himself later by sacrificing his eye. By this point, he no longer believed in people, systems, or bonds. Only in plans, only in control. When he realized his body was failing, he started preparing the next stage. He transplanted his eyes into Nagato without him knowing, hoping those eyes would eventually bring him back. He also started searching for someone who could carry his will. And that is where Obito comes in. A lonely kid crushed by war, abandoned, broken, easy to shape. Madara saved his body, but more importantly, he shaped his worldview. He let Obito witness Rin's death. He understood exactly how trauma works. Pain breaks people. Loss makes them desperate, and desperation makes them easy to guide. Madara just gave that hopelessness a direction. When Madara finally came back during the 4th Shinobi War, everything people said about him looked true. Even as Edo Tensei, nobody could stop him. The 5 Kage looked useless, entire armies could not touch him, and look at his reaction. But the real irony is that Madara spent his whole life trying to control everything. People, events, outcomes, even reality itself. And in the end, he was the one being controlled. Black Zetsu used him from the beginning and threw him away the moment he was no longer useful. The guy who trusted nobody, who planned everything alone, still failed to see the one thing behind him. He dead, not as a god, but as a friend next to Hashirama. The only person who ever truly understood him. Two people who walked different paths after growing up in the same pain. If you look at what actually happened in the story, Madara still changed the Shinobi world. Not the way he planned, but the result is there. All villages united. People who used to hate each other fought on the same side. The cycle of constant war finally stopped, at least for a while. And that only happened because everyone had a bigger enemy in front of them. That enemy was Madara. Without him, that level of unity probably never happens. His perspective about human nature was not completely wrong either. Conflict kept repeating for generations. Temporary peace always collapsed back into war. The Shinobi system failed again and again. Where Madara crossed the line was the solution. He tried to force peace instead of letting people choose it. He removed free will instead of risking failure. That is the real problem with his dream. Not that he wanted peace, but that he believed only he had the right to decide what peace should look like. Madara was not some cartoon villain who just wanted power. He was shaped by war, loss, and disappointment from childhood. He lost almost everyone he loved. He built a village and still felt rejected. He trusted nobody because life taught him that trust always ends with betrayal. That is why everything he did came from control. Control over himself, control over others, control over the world. They stop believing in people and start believing only in their own will. That is where Madara went wrong. Not because he wanted peace, but because he believed only his way mattered. And that is why people still think he's one of the best villains. He was intelligent, he was loyal, he loved his family, he had real reasons behind everything he did. But he could not accept limits. He could not accept failure. He could not accept that other people might carry the burden with him. His downfall was not weakness. His downfall was loneliness. If I got anything wrong about Madara, correct me in the comments. I actually want to hear different perspectives, and tell me which character you want me to deep dive next. If you enjoyed this kind of breakdown, you can support the channel by liking, subscribing, or turning on notifications. It helps more than you think. Thank you for watching. Seriously.